The story of the pirate battle at Cape Lopez begins with the powerful African who sheltered pirates and enabled piracy in early 18th century West Africa, John Conny. Throughout his long and eventful life, the Ahantan king who feasted with pirates, drank from Dutchmen's skulls, and dressed his wives in solid gold, if the European stories were to be believed, went by many names and titles. Each decade of his life was marked by tremendous upheaval, requiring dexterity and flexibility to keep up with demands put upon his people as the European trade in enslaved captives ramped up. Because he had to reinvent himself regularly, there are many places where the story of John Conny could begin. In 1662, when he was just a teenager, an encounter among his people, the Ahanta, permanently shaped his worldview regarding his place among the Europeans who traded captive Africans on the coast that he called home. To John Conny, home was among the Ahanta, who lived in a town called Pokezu at the top of Manfro Hill. Manfro Hill was covered in palm trees and located next to Cape Three Points on the coast of West Africa in the western region of what today is called Ghana. The people there looked south into the Gulf of Guinea and wider Atlantic Ocean. As a child, Conny had met a few European men, pink-faced and soft-bellied, who sometimes marched, or more often were carried on litters or in hammocks by groups of miserable servants or enslaved captives into his town to speak with the chief, his distant uncle, in hushed tones behind brightly colored curtains. It sometimes took days for the sour look to leave his uncle's face after their strange visits. Whenever Conny asked about these meetings, he was rebuffed, and an aunt or grandmother would press a sweet treat into his hand or mouth to stop his line of questioning. That all changed in 1662, when a Prussian ship with billowing white sails and colorful flags sailed into Cape Three Points. The chief of Ahanta had been standing on the shores all morning, waiting for the ship to anchor, and watching warily as the canoemen he sent collected the white officers and rowed them to shore. Ahanta's chief, who remains unnamed in the documentation, had come from a people whose previous chief had signed a treaty with the Dutch at the neighboring fort at Boutry 8 years prior, in 1658. When the Prussians extended him an offer of alliance, he was uninclined to accommodate them. He claimed the Dutch had not upheld their end of the bargain to protect his people from the African allies of the English slave traders. He was weary, as the Prussians were the third group of Europeans who had tried to get his attention. Before his agreement with the Dutch, the chief had signed with the Swedish at Boutry in 1650. In a mere dozen years, the Ahanta's history with the English, Swedes, and Dutch made the current chief highly knowledgeable of the desires that European men brought with them to his coast, and his varied disappointments had schooled him in how to extract things like military aid and personal safety from them in return. The chief knew that if he did not at least entertain them, someone else would, and then that same someone else might come for him or his people.